Wow, stories.
I, M29, met my current wife, F28, through my sister. We didn't ask about the family too much during the engagement. I visited back home and we did our engagement, Nika, but we never consummated the marriage with the understanding that this will happen after the wedding when she joins me in my current country of residence, UK. We have been together for 6 months, engaged for 3. We are each other's first love and I truly adore her. She loves me very much as well, I think. During our relationship, we never had any major fights, but in the first dates, she did mention that she was short-tempered. Before we met, she went through a failed engagement, and the failure, according to her, was because of the mother-in-law. I brushed it off and didn't question her history too much, since I thought she was vulnerable because of it. But it seems to have created some trauma for her. On the day of the engagement ceremony, my mother-in-law offended my mother, but my father-in-law controlled the situation, and it went all right after my wife apologized. A month later, when we were confirming our marriage in court, another incident happened, and she clashed with my mother over it. I staunchly defended my wife without knowing that she raised her voice against my parents. My mother got really sick, but the issue was finally put to rest. The incident. This leads us to the events of the city weekend. She was scheduled to go attend her embassy appointment for the visa, and because she lived far from the city, she had to go sleep in my parents' house. From the start, she was very hesitant, and instead of going there in the morning, I agreed for her to go there in the afternoon. She was supposed to be there early afternoon in time for a late lunch. She got late by around 1 hour, and this is when things went south. I sent her a text asking her very politely to call my mother specifically, apologize for the delay, and tell her she is on her way. She started making a fuss in the chat, so I called her and she flipped on me in the street to the point that her brother had to take the phone from her. I did say one hurtful sentence, something to the effect that my parents' home isn't a hotel that you check in, and they had been preparing for you as an honored guest since 2 a.m. Anyway, the call ended and I was fuming but silent. This was the first time she ever raised her voice in my face, and in the street of all places. She goes into my parents' house all grumpy and angry, treats everyone with contempt, not verbally, but through body language, and then starts complaining about my phone call to my father, who is a very calm and collected man like me. My mother overhears the story and then video calls me immediately, reprimands me in front of everyone for angering my wife when she is traveling in the morning, and asks me to apologize to her. So I do it publicly in front of everyone, and even start flirting with her to make her less angry. She keeps on the grumpy face, and my mother then reacts, asking her, "Why don't you take the phone and go inside and talk to your husband privately?" At this moment, my wife flips and starts defending herself, and why she was late, and why no one should be annoyed by it. Her voice is very high, much higher than my mother's, who is responding as well. And the whole thing turns into a shouting match. So I shout on both to stop since we have a trip in the morning, but I am ignored. After a couple of tries with me apologizing, my sister trying to smooth things out, and finally my mother going to kiss her head, she stopped shouting but was still grumpy throughout the night and the morning. I apologize again during the night in text and in the morning in video, not because I think I am wrong, but because she has a long trip and I don't want her to be stressed. But she treats my family with staggering passive aggressiveness. She goes on the trip and it's all going well, and I'm constantly on video with her and trying to be happy for her just until she returns so we can discuss this alone. But my face shows it. The next day, after the trip and before she goes back home, she decides to go visit my family. It seems she sensed my anger and tried to rectify things. She bought some goodies and asked me if it was all right for her to visit my family and give them the gifts before going home, with no talk of apologizing or reopening the issue again. I call home and sense the atmosphere to be not that great. So I immediately text her to not visit my family. She doesn't see the text message. She tried to give a half apology, but my mother refused to engage with her. At the start, she pressed it, so my mother refused her apology. And the thing turned into another shouting match, and she left their house crying. What to do next? I have canceled her visa application for the moment. I asked a single friend and they advised me to end it. My family shares the same view. They said that this behavior that happened during the engagement will happen again tenfold during the marriage. I am okay with her being short-tempered, but not for her to cross the boundary with my family. The opinion is that I still haven't been fully committed to this marriage, and that breaking things off right now is the wise thing to do. Now, for a few comments before the update. Comment 1. Why are you marrying someone you barely know? Also, why are you recounting a story about how she behaved when you were not there? You are characterizing her body language that you didn't see. Some of your parents' behavior and your behavior is off too. It's so strange that you told her she should feel bad for being delayed because your parents woke up in the middle of the night to prepare for her visit. She definitely should communicate delays, but it doesn't actually sound like your parents are very reasonable people. She came to bring gifts and apologize, and your mother refused her apology? And again, you describe her apology as being a half apology without even being there. It sounds like you don't want to hear her side at all. It also sounds like your parents don't actually want to try to make amends with her or welcome her into your family. This definitely sounds like an everyone sucks here situation. Comment 2. I'm going to skip the whole you barely know her crap. It's an arranged marriage. You're supposed to get to know her. But your family should have done their due diligence and understood the type of family you were marrying into too. If they didn't, that's on you guys. You got married and at the first negative incident, you're jumping ship. That speaks volumes about you. Any woman you marry will want her husband on her side, but your loyalties lie only with your immediate family, it seems. I don't know if you're in Pakistan or India, but in either place, being an hour late is not unusual or a big deal. But you made it into a big deal. Next, never force someone to apologize. That's so condescending. Your wife could have acted more mature, but so can your mom. She refused her apology, like, what is she, the queen? You're going to have drama no matter who you marry because of mommy dearest. Now, for the update. Hey everyone, thanks for sticking with me through this. So, after the last incident, things have been pretty tense. My wife went back to her parents' house, and we didn't talk much for the first couple of days. I needed some time to cool off and think about everything that had happened. My family was still upset, and I was caught in the middle, trying to figure out what to do next. A few days later, my wife called me. She sounded calmer and wanted to talk things through. We agreed to meet up in a neutral place, so we both traveled to a nearby city. The conversation started off awkwardly, but we eventually got into the nitty-gritty of what had happened. She admitted that she had overreacted and that her behavior was unacceptable. She explained that her past experiences with her ex-fiance's family had left her with a lot of unresolved anger and fear, which she had unfairly projected onto my family. I could see that she was genuinely remorseful, but I was still hesitant. I told her that while I understood her past trauma, it didn't excuse her actions. We needed to find a way to move forward that didn't involve her lashing out at my family. She agreed and suggested that we both attend couples therapy to work on our communication and conflict resolution skills. I thought it was a good idea, so we decided to give it a try. The first therapy session was eye-opening. The therapist helped us understand each other's perspectives better and gave us tools to manage our emotions. My wife opened up about her childhood and how her parents' volatile relationship had shaped her reactions. She had always felt the need to defend herself aggressively, because that's what she had seen growing up. This revelation made me realize that her behavior wasn't just about my family. It was a deeper issue that needed addressing. Meanwhile, back at home, my family was still not convinced. They were wary of my wife's intentions and worried that her behavior would continue to cause problems. My mother in particular was very hurt and felt disrespected. I tried to explain to them what we had discussed in therapy, but they were skeptical. They felt that my wife needed to make a genuine effort to mend things with them before they could even consider forgiving her. A week later, my wife decided to write a heartfelt letter to my family, apologizing for her actions and explaining her past traumas. She didn't expect immediate forgiveness, but wanted them to understand where she was coming from. I delivered the letter to my parents, and they took their time reading it. My mother was still hurt, but my father seemed more open to the idea of giving her another chance. During this time, I was also dealing with my own internal conflict. I loved my wife and wanted to make things work, but I couldn't ignore the strain it was putting on my relationship with my family. I felt torn between my loyalty to my wife and my duty to my parents. The therapist helped me navigate these feelings, emphasizing the importance of setting boundaries and finding a balance. As the days went by, my wife made a conscious effort to change. She started attending individual therapy sessions to work on her anger issues and past traumas. She also reached out to my sister, who had always been more understanding, and they began to rebuild their relationship. My sister played a crucial role in mediating between my wife and my parents, helping to ease some of the tension. One evening, my wife and I had a long conversation about our future. She expressed her desire to move past this and build a strong, healthy relationship with my family. She knew it wouldn't be easy, but she was willing to put in the effort. I appreciated her honesty and commitment, but I still had my doubts. I told her that while I was willing to give her another chance, any future incidents would have serious consequences. The turning point came when my wife decided to visit my parents' house again, this time with a different approach. She asked me to accompany her, and we both went with the intention of having a calm, respectful conversation. My parents were hesitant at first, but they agreed to hear her out. My wife apologized sincerely, without making excuses, and acknowledged the hurt she had caused. She also shared some of the insights she had gained from therapy, which helped my parents understand her better. My mother was still guarded, but my father seemed more receptive. He appreciated her effort and willingness to change. My wife promised to continue working on herself and to respect the boundaries we had set. It was a small step, but it felt like progress. As we left my parents' house, I felt a mix of relief and uncertainty. I knew we still had a long way to go, but I was hopeful that we could make it work. My wife and I continued with our therapy sessions, and slowly, things began to improve. We learned to communicate better and to address our issues without letting them escalate into full-blown argument. In the midst of all this, I had to make a decision about the visa application. After much deliberation, I decided to reinstate it. I felt that my wife was genuinely trying to change, and I wanted to give our marriage a fair chance. I informed my family my decision, and while they were still cautious, they respected my choice. As we moved forward, I couldn't help but think about the future. I knew that our relationship would be tested again, but I hoped that the foundation we were building would help us navigate any challenges that came our way. My wife's past had shaped her in many ways, but I believed that with time and effort, we could overcome the obstacles and build a stronger, more resilient marriage.